DLC.
Lana, I am so excited to talk about the games that you have been playing because one of them, you said, Jeff, if I'm going to be on the show this week, is there something that I should play? And I suggested one of my favorite games of all time that has just been re-released in an updated, remastered, reimagined Anniversary Edition.
Mm-hmm. I'm very excited as well. It's been on my list of to play for a long time. That is Braid. I loved The Witness. I remember I cried twice when I played The Witness. Once out of pure frustration and once out of pure joy to have finished the time trial or whatever. And Braid, it's one of those games that after I played The Witness, the next question everybody has always asked me is, "Oh, have you played Braid?" No, I've never played Braid. And I felt like I had a picture of what it was in my head, and then it pulled up the load screen, and I'm 1,000,000% confident I've never even seen a picture of it.
Wow.
Before I started playing. I had no idea what to expect. What a delight. What a delight. You can clearly see, the fingerprints of things that ended up in The Witness in sort of a better state. I think for lack of a better word, sort of tutorialization, like how you are walked through, like you learn different puzzles before you get hit with like the more challenging ones. There's a little bit more of like running your head into the wall in Braid, but the joy that you have from it. So Braid, for anybody who might be like me, if you haven't played it, is a very short experience. I think it was only a couple hours. I finished it in a really teeny tiny window, and you play as a little guy. I forget his name already. Tim. And there's some amount of little plot that is sort of sweet, and I'll let you just read that. If you haven't read it, you go and you look at it. But you go through the world and you have like time powers, and they're slightly different in every world that you go to, and you have to do different little tasks to pick up puzzle pieces, which eventually put together in little pictures at the end. And you finish the worlds like Mario Worlds. And that's effectively the loop. It's a side scroller. You run through, you get the puzzle pieces, you make the picture. Ta-da, next world. But what the puzzles are and the unique variety of time mechanics. If you get hit, you can immediately rewind and fix whatever mistake, make a different choice. But how much things break that? Some things you can't be rewound. Some things get affected by a different little ghost of yours that goes through and affects things. It is so delightful on the brain to go through and get these little puzzle pieces, and the sweet, strange little art style of these guys in this world, and like a sort of sweet, I'm not going to say like, it leaves like a lot. The story itself is kind of like, it seems like there's a lot there that you can take more from it if you want to, or just try and read of like what specifically this story was inspired by. But I just loved the whole experience. I'm going to stop talking because I want to hear from you about it.
I'm so delighted that you loved it. I was so curious how this game lands in 2024 because it came out in 2008. And at that time, it's hard to remember exactly what had come before it and what was to come after it. But it felt like the indie game revolution was just beginning. And honestly, it feels like Braid is one of the games that kicked it off. And the fact that this game is sort of in conversation with all of the games that came before it, specifically Super Mario Brothers, right? It assumes that its audience is familiar with the vocabulary of games, and then it absolutely subverts those expectations. It takes your knowledge of how Super Mario Brothers is supposed to work and plays with that. And I think it does it so brilliantly. But I was very concerned that today that is just passé. That's like, so many games have done that now. And whereas in 2008, it was a pretty revolutionary notion. It really, what I remember being so gobsmacked by this game at that time, we reviewed it on TRS and all of us raved about it. And I remember it feeling like this completely unique idea of what a video game could do. And that it really is about the main character is working through a relationship and using video games as a metaphor to deal with those feelings. And that just seems so, you take that for granted now, that people would think about video games as a metaphor for their life, and video games are so ingrained in our culture and ingrained in just average growing up life. But in 2008 it really did feel like, oh my gosh, someone's speaking to me.
Mm.
Someone is kind of talking about how I interact with video games, and that they aren't a childish thing. They are something that actually a lens through which I can interpret adult things in my life. And I think Braid does that in such brilliant ways. And that's not even speaking to what you're talking about, which is how, just on a pure technical level, how fun the puzzles are.
Mm-hmm.
Because they really are. There are a few where you go, oh my gosh, that's allowed? That we can do
Yes.
that in this game?
That was like, to me, I mean, playing The Witness, not, if you haven't played The Witness, you gotta. But playing The Witness, and I felt like I had the best possible experience, to the point where I'm like, I wish I had a video camera set up so I could watch my own reaction, because I know how I felt of like the big twist kind of moment. I went through everything that you could do before I got to that point, where I've heard other people discover it early or whatever. And this game has a sparkle of that. It is not the same depth, but there's still
Right.
a moment, a couple of moments where I do something and it's like, oh man, that's awesome. That
Yeah.
is so technically cool. I'm like, oh, I re-release it. Come on, re-release it. Add 16 more hours. Let's go. It's so delightful to use the mechanics of the game. It's
Yeah.
really great.
Well, and of course we're comparing those because Jonathan Blow is the designer
Made
of
both of
both, and
them. Yeah.
basically a singular artist who, is responsible for each of these games in their entirety. And this is, I think, his first real game that
This is
he
the one
released
that put him
on the
out
map.
there in the
Yeah,
world. Yeah.
100%, and justifiably so. And so this anniversary edition, which I've also been playing a lot this week, is an update of the original Braid. The graphics have been overhauled. Although, they have that wonderful thing, Christian, that we love in games, where you can click in the stick and it'll instantly flip back and forth from the original to the current, which you gotta love. And I gotta say, the original graphics hold up. I could have played it all with the original graphics look great
It looked,
still.
I mean, for me, it just looked like they got scaled up more than they had the resolution, but otherwise they looked almost the same. The fidelity of, specifically, there were like more frames in the animation,
Yeah.
but otherwise looked almost identical. I switched back and forth all of the time.
Well, it has this painterly look, and there are some things that are just painted differently, but
Yeah,
not like better.
better.
It's just like different. It's like,
It
oh,
just
cool, they redid it.
it looked like I put glasses on.
Yeah.
It was like just a
Yeah.
little bit blurry, and then I'm like, oh, there it is. Oh, it
Yeah.
looks exactly like it used to, but clearer. The other thing that I haven't dug a ton into, but is like, every game needs this, but I don't know how you'd possibly do it. Have you gone into the commentary?
Oh, yes. So cool.
Oh,
So cool. Yeah.
so cool. Oh, commentary that you like, that is like sort of like podcast format, interview format, but like you warp to the place in the world where the commentary is about, and you can kind of run around in it while it's talking in the back. It's so great. That
Yeah.
to me is like, in the same way that you were saying, oh, I'm looking at this thing and it is an adult thing that I'm interested in, that is through the lens of games. Commentary of like director's commentary for movies. That's like the same way. This is what a commentary should be for games. You play it in the game, putting it in that same space. I love when it's brought together like that. And it really does show. I mean, I don't want to talk a lot about Jonathan Blow, but it shows his care for the craft of the game. And I respect that a lot.
Yeah, and it's so many really clever ways of illustrating things. They'll show things in a window that's like an overlay on the game screen, and you can pull that up and make it full
Yeah.
screen. And it really is. It's clear a lot of care was taken in how this game was brought back. That this isn't just like, hey, remember the game that came out in 2008? It really is kind of a retrospective, an explanation, a real delving deeper into what made this game so special. And I think very, very worthwhile as a re-release. And it's fun because it's been so long since I played it. There were a few of them I was like, oh yeah, I remember how you finished this. But there was a bunch where I still was like, how the heck do I get past this? And I played it with my son a little
Oh.
bit, my 7-year-old, and he is, obsessed with Super Mario Brothers for a long time. Now he's into Minecraft, and Super Mario is in the rearview mirror. But he was obsessed about the games that this game is very much a commentary on in a lot of ways. And so I thought, wow, this is gonna be interesting to see if he groks this. The coolest thing happened while we were playing. There's a like world 3 or 4 or something. There's a level where when you move, the bad guys move.
Mm.
And we were playing that. He goes, "Oh, Dad, this is a reference to Donkey Kong." And I was
Oh.
like, "I love you so much, my son. You're back in the will, son. You're back in the will."
Oh my gosh. I love that.
He did
Wow.
not. He found it a little bit. We did a few of the things together, and we worked it out. And he was really digging it. And he was so excited when he figured something out. And he's like, "Oh, Dad, try this." And when we would try it, and he's like, "Oh, it didn't work." And we solved a couple of them, but there was a couple where we got a little stuck. And then he was like, "Let's play something else, Dad." I was like, "Okay, all right, I get it. 7's kind of young for this
Yeah.
game." But I was pretty proud of him that he figured out a few of the puzzles.
I played with my husband who'd played before, and let me tell you, nothing feels better than having the guy who's played the game before and he retains everything all the time. Infuriating. Be like me being like, I think this is how I gotta do it. And him being like, no, that's impossible. And then just doing it the next second, nothing makes me be like, I'm a gamer. It's like so satisfying and so smart to like, how can I get how many double jumps off of this guy because I'm like rewinding and fast forwarding. Oh, it's so satisfying. And it was very funny how immediate I played the game for again, just like a couple hours. It's not a long experience. And how instantly I'm like, every game must have this mechanic. Going back to Animal Well, which I know you talked a bunch about, how many times am I hitting rewind being like, oh, come on, take me back.
It is a beautiful thing in Braid where dying isn't a big deal. Nothing is a big deal because you can just keep trying it over. And he can create a puzzle that requires the most precise thing for you to do because you can just keep trying that like 1.5 seconds over and over and over until you get it right. It's such a brilliant mechanic.
It's brilliant, and the way that it's built is also brilliant because the music choice, I want to specifically find the commentary that is about the music, that in playing it forward and backwards, you don't feel like you want to die listening to that over and over again. And as like an animator, having listened to like where like over and over and over, it makes you go crazy. It felt nice. The certain instruments that he used, that even when you're rewinding, it feels almost just like a weird part of the music for a bit, but definitely the vibe. It's like beautiful. It's just beautifully done. Beautiful.
Christian, did you ever play Braid originally?
I did. I played original Braid. I liked it. I think it, it felt interesting in the time in which it came out, but I found it to be, it wasn't my favorite game the year it came out, certainly, but I remember finding moments of it to be slower than I wanted when I first experienced it, which I think is probably a reflection of me more than anything else, or where I was in my life, of like, I came into it way back when, Lana, I don't know if you were aware of kind of what it was, but I came into it as your son, Jeff, being like, I got my, like the lead up to the game was not secretive, but I remember it being like, it didn't tell you necessarily, it was like, wait, what is this game? How do I do what now? Oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this right now. So it took me like a few moments of trying to getting into it and figuring it out. But the end of that of Braid, I feel like, is still an all timer in terms of.
Agreed.
I will just be
Incredible
vague
ending.
in terms of a emotional moment in a video game. It's superb.
The other thing about it, there is like a special second layer of it that I've heard is more obnoxious than it is cool, of like collecting certain items that you can get. Is that something that you delved into after the fact?
I did not.
Yeah, I did not. I have not revisited any of that, but I remember in the first game doing that because it came out when Xbox achievements were like, just had hit the scene.
Oh,
you needed to get those achievements were a big deal because there was only like. There's like 30 games that have achievements, There's like, it's about as all. So
when achievements came out, did they just show you what it was? It was like, do all of the secret tasks. And you're like, I guess I have to do, I don't even know what that means.
No, I mean, there were still hidden achievements. And stuff
okay.
Back then, but yeah, I remember that being like, if you have if you can get 1,000 gamer score on a game, ooh, you are really serious.
You are
business.
really a gamer.
Unless it's Naruto, then no one cares. No one cares about your 1,000 in easy.
I do feel like Braid is in that Mount Rushmore for me with Portal and The Witness, and I don't know what the fourth game would be, but the games that make you feel like a genius for just doing what the game expects you to do. I am a god.
Especially like you take any puzzle to show it to somebody who hasn't played it at all and they can't do it, and you're like, oh, I can. Yeah, I know the rules.
Check this out.
Yeah.
You can get the full audio version of this show by subscribing to the RSS feed, which you can find at dlcpod.com. And you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dlcpod, where you will get ad-free versions of the show, video versions of the show on demand, and a whole bunch of extra content, like Wednesday's show, paid DLC, including spoiler chats, so much more. That's patreon.com/dlcpod.